Yeah, for sure. First of all, it's great to be with everybody. I've been talking about this a lot. Um, just a little bit, about myself. So I came over to IADC 2 years ago, almost in March 2023, after spending 11 years at the Fed, where probably a lot of you know me from my, national work on entrepreneurship ecosystems. So then I came over to work for Nathan, who took over IADC, Oli, who took over IADC about a year and a half before I got there. So I want to say late 2021 or early 2022. And, just a sea change of things going on at IADC since he took over. Obviously, coming from a different background, spending some time at EDA, running Rural Community Action Partnership, and working for the development department at the state of Michigan, even prior to that. It kind of ushered in a new era for IADC, which looks at, economic development for more than just, an industrial attraction centric lens. So now, a lot of entrepreneurship led development, community development, workforce development, and of course, your old meat and potatoes economic development, industrial retention and attraction and things that are adjacent to that. You also know, probably aware that you are one of our partners for the big $30 million economic development, economic recovery corps program. Some of you may have a host or may know a host or maybe a host or may have some fellows there. So, Nathan's big thing is in the spirit of collaboration and partnerships and seeing how we can really bring more people together to ensure, that we create global inclusive prosperity, making sure the economy works for all. And so that's kind of what attracted me to come over to IEDC at that point after being a certified developer since 2013 was the opportunity to work with Nathan and really work to expand the field of economic development to ensure that more people felt like it was a Big Ten approach. So that's the backstory. Now let's before I go there, let me see if I can share the screen. Ooh. So before we get into more of the AI, I have a shameless plug. We do have our leadership conference coming up February 23rd and 25th in DC. Love to see you there. This is the conference that really focuses on the leadership component of economic development. And this year we kind of moved it to DC to kind of get more, engagement in the political space, make sure people were able to communicate, effectively to policymakers. So that's a great opportunity for you if you haven't taken advantage of that. And I'm debating because every time I do this on Zoom, it gets weird. Andrew, can you see the whole screen now?
Yep, yeah, it looks good.
Okay, cool. So before we get into ways that we can use ChatGPT, and we're gonna have some fun. I'm gonna walk you through a lot of stuff that I think will be useful, and I've really narrowed it down to ChatGPT just for simplicity's sake. But there's a lot of other similar tools or tools that actually perform better in different areas than ChatGPT. Most people are familiar with it. So my experience with AI was this. I've always been interested in kind of new technologies and et cetera. But I remember vividly, this is a February, let's see, 2024, 2023. February 2023, I kept hearing about this thing called ChatGPT. And and I was hearing people talk about ChatGPT, because OpenAI really released this to the public in November 2022. And I'm thinking to myself, who really cares about another advanced search engine? We got Google. I can figure things out. And let me tell you, the first time I ever used it, the very first time, like within probably a minute, I said, holy bleep, this is going to change everything. Because what it was doing and what I found it could do, even in the early stages of the early iterations of it, was to me was just insane. And as a professional in your space, that's where I really think people can maximize the benefits of generative AI by taking, the skills and the things that being able to leverage AI tools so that you spend less time on processes and more time on, let's say, ideation or ensuring that the output is correct is where it is. And then it also allows you to do things that you couldn't do before without having, let's say, hiring a consultant, spending a lot of time doing some other things. Simple example. I've always built my personal websites on this free website, creator called Weebly.com. And in it, you have embed code. I've never been a coder. My mind doesn't really work like that. Now in those, you can like pull over. It's one of those drag and drop systems where you can pull over, into your block what you want, whether it's a picture or whatever else. And you can do this thing called embed code. So now all of a sudden I'm going to an AI tool and I'm saying, okay, create me a visualization in a drop-down menu so people can know uh, everything that I'm saying about this particular topic. So let's say that it's different forms of economic development. I need a drop-down button so that when the user presses the button, it shows the definition of the term, right? Before I would have had to hire a coder or learn how to code to figure out to do it. It rips out that code in 15 seconds. I copy and paste it and I put it into this embed, form into my website, and then all of a sudden it's there. And so you remember when we were talking about, because I was one of them. I was telling everybody, go into coding. You'll never have a problem in coding. You'll always have a job in coding. Now all of a sudden, you got these tools, which is why you're seeing so many of people in those labor markets, being eliminated, is because these tools can now do this stuff. Things we never thought: white collar job disruption, creative job destruction of creative destruction of creative jobs, all these different kind of things. That's kind of what we're seeing. But we're going to talk not about the implications for economic development. We're actually going to do some cool stuff to kind of help you think through how you can use this to create a CEDS plan. And I admit I've worked on this probably longer than I should, but I was interested to try to figure it out and be able to teach it in a way that's replicatable in other types of plans that people have to create. So let's start big picture. What are ways ChatGPT can help in a CEDS plan? Data collection, it can help you streamline research, identify and organize key sources, economic trends, regional data. ChatGPT has a search function. It can search the internet. It can begin to pull things over for you, help you identify those. Data analysis. I do research on the side. I'm still doing a little bit of research, and I work with Dr. Christy Carter. We did a research project on Black women entrepreneurs and comparing the ecosystems in Kansas City, Missouri, and in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? We use a method to do qualitative coding for all of the focus groups to come out with themes and trends. So the data analysis, if it's quantitative, the ability to kind of track trends, visualize those trends. Writing support, this is what most of us think about. When I did a series of focus groups with our members last year, ranging from EDOs, economic development organizations above 5 million, all the way down to really small ones, the biggest trend that I heard was people were using it for content creation in their marketing, in their blogging, things like that. But it's so much more. But that you can do that in a CEDS plan, from putting together your SWOT action plans, all of those different kind of things. From community engagement, the things which still require human touch, you can synthesize the feedback. You can figure out ways to implement it into your strategic plan. And then in the evaluation and metrics side, you can help it give you insight to develop the metrics, implement them, measure them, all of those different kind of things. So when you see this list, this is one tool. And we're talking about the pro version now, so it's going to cost you $20 a month, but it's worth it. This is one tool that can do all of these things. And if you're really creative, there's enough tools out there that you can use the free versions of different tools to do the same thing. But we're focusing on one tool, ChatGPT, today. So I was thinking about how to explain this to people in broad audiences, and those that follow me on LinkedIn probably saw me write the article and put this article with this on it. And so this is really useful for you to thinking at a high level how to get better outputs from ChatGPT. So if you look at it as data, prompt, output. So your data can come in a variety of sources. And when you're working on a CEDS plan, you probably already started collecting data if you're not starting from scratch. But think about it, you have your web-based data, your ability to search the web to identify, articles and sources, to use as a pool of data. You have AI training data. This data is very comprehensive. Pretty much they're saying they have to start creating different forms of data, synthetic data, whatever, because they ran out of the ability to train it on all the data that's on the internet. And then you have your uploaded documents, which is most folks don't understand the power of this, but your uploaded documents where you can actually upload documents. Let's say you already have collected, your economic data, you collected your qualitative insights. You can upload that and use that as a basis for communicating with the AI. So you have your data sources, and then you have your prompt. Your prompt is the trigger of it all. And I heard a great quote today. He said, "Your prompt should fit the complexity of the task." Like I use it for everything. I was the other day, like I've been in this big, making chicken jerky. And so I was like, hey, tell me how to make chicken jerky, right? I don't need a complex prompt for that. Just tell me how to make chicken jerky, right? Tell me what I should wear in Omaha when it's -9 degrees, like it's the other day. Like those things are simple. You just go in and you talk to it. If they got the voice feature now, if you want to chat with it, you can chat with it, whatever. But once you start doing more complex work on it, you really need to be able to create effective prompts. I'm not going to go into that. It's not really rocket science, but you need to be more thoughtful in the prompts. And so if you're not getting the output that you want, it's probably because you have a deficit in your data somewhere or a deficit in how you prompted it. So I just want people to think about that this is usually an iterative process. It's very hard in many cases to get things right that are complex on the very first try. So somebody also said, explain it when you're dealing with a more complex project, how you would explain something in short form to a new employee. So if I had a new employee, let's say, so my responsibilities here, which I didn't say, so I'm over research, pro dev, all of our, grant related work, and some of our, earn revenue functions, right? So if I hired a new person for professional development and I wanted them to develop a course for me, I'm not just going to say, hey, new person, glad to have you make a course. I would give it very specific instructions that were consistent with what I wanted to see as an output, that were consistent with the topics that I want to have, all of those different kind of things. And so when you're prompting for complex projects and complex actions, you want to do that unless you're just testing a prompt. Then in that case, I would probably tell ChatGPT, hey, write me a course, just to kind of see what its output was. And if I wanted to then, iterate that prompt to make it better from there, which I've done before, I would do that. But for the most part, the better prompt that you start with, the better output, the better data that you have into it, the better the output. And ultimately, that's what we're getting to. So the components of a CEDS plan, your summary, background, SWOT analysis, strategic direction and action plan evaluation framework, and economic resilience and appendices. And you can do aspects of all of these things, even the sub-bullets, with generative AI, ChatGPT specifically. I got a cheat sheet for you I'm going to send out because that's the last of the presentation. This is what I put together for you, just so that you would be able to not just listen to me talk and see me do some things, but you would also have it. So what I did was I broke the whole CEDS plan down. I'll make it bigger for you by the categories, breaking it down by task, like data discovery, writing, data analysis. Those are the 3 core tasks. I put a bucket into how ChatGPT can help you in each of those tasks. And then I gave you a basic, they're not very good prompts, but they're okay, a basic prompt example for how to do that. So for example, summary background, data discovery, identifying sources, regional data, and summarizing key findings. List reliable sources prompt would be list reliable sources for regional and economic data. And some of what I'm going to do is literally just pick from these and put them into ChatGPT so you can show how, excuse me, you can show, how it's done. So let's do this. I want to show you one other thing because as a labor of love, because they're not paying me for this, nor would I ask for it. I spent a lot of time on this because I wanted to know how to do it differently for CEDS plans. And so one of the things we're going to play with is I went through and created all of these mock data so that we can start playing around and see if we could create a mini CEDS plan later today. So insights, engagement, data, all of that thing. So we'll play around with that for a little bit. Then also, even though we're not going to talk about it, I created a Notebook LM, which is it's just awesome. If you've seen the video that I did on LinkedIn, this is like my go-to tool. You see how much I use it now. It's kind of a big aggregator from Google, and you can add it into 30 sources. And so one of the things I did was I put in all the insights from the CEDS off the EDA website, including the guidelines full report, which I'm going to show you what I did there. And then I can just talk to all of it. I can ask it things like, hey, tell tell me how to do a good SWOT analysis. And it'll go through all of those documents, and then it'll kind of, spit out what it sees that those documents say about a good SWOT analysis. And it only uses the documents that you upload. It doesn't do all the other training material like that. So this is cool. And if you actually have access to Google Plus, their paid account, $20 a month. I can give you a link to this and you can come in and play with it themselves. If you want to generate a podcast on it, you can. And so then it'll spit out stuff like this and give you a good insight. It'll show you can hover over the bullet. It'll tell you where it found it, all those cool things. Also, what I put together is I pulled all of the if you go through the website, it'll tell you all the CEDS plans that are exemplars of specific pieces of the CEDS. So like this is a great example of the action, the background, the evaluation, etc. I literally pulled 4 out of each of those categories and I put it in here so that if I wanted to know, for example, what is a great, example of a good action plan, it would actually show me from the documents. And if you see notes already created, for example, as I was trying to prep for this, I was kind of like, well, let's look at all of these plans. I think it's like 26 or whatever, 24, and give me an estimate of how many pages are in each one. And it kind of went through and gave me a summary. Said, well, in these plans, the executive summary is between 1 to 5, background 10 to 30, etc. So you can do a lot of cool stuff with these other tools as well. But I kind of wanted you to show that because this is actually how things that you can use, and it helped me to kind of create a database for the things that you want your team to be able to talk to go into and learn from, or to keep track of. And then that can be used in other forms of output. So for those of you who are not deep in the chat GPT, this is the entry portal of it. Now there's different things that we can do. And then again, this is for the paid version, $20 a month version that we're going to use for this. So these are all of my GPTs and chats, but this is what I really want you to focus on here, which is the projects function, which is a new tool that came out late last year, but it's amazing. I encourage you to use it for creating a project. You see, I already have a project for creating CEDS plans because I was really working on, prepping for this, and I did that. So we're going to start with a new project. And the name of my region, egotistically, in my mock data is Dellville. So we're going to work on a CEDS plan for Dellville. And it's not a city, it's not a town, it's a region. So let's call it Dellville Region CEDS. So once you go to your project, you create your project. And the good thing about a project is that it allows you to have multiple chats within that same project. So I can come back to this and continue to use that chat. So you can imagine if you're working on longer form documents, recurring type of things where you want to keep track of, let's say it's a weekly newsletter and you create one chat for each week, with some shared stuff. Now, in this, you have something called custom instructions. The only thing that I'm going to put in here, this tells you how ChatGPT can write or think about a project. I'm going to tell it how to write. Write any output in language that is approximately 10th to 11th grade. And this is probably high because the average readability is between like 8 and 10, which is what I tend to use for most of my output. But for this one, because it's a CEDS plan and we want to see, professional, right? We're going to keep it at that language. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with that, but that's a conversation for a different day. Now, I'm going to add files, and this is what makes projects cool. So if I add a file here, every chat that I have comes after that will be able to access the file. And so let me go into my document where I put all my CEDS stuff, research and writing CEDS. And so I downloaded that big PDF that they have on the EDA website that tells you everything about how to write a CEDS. So I'm going to take that. I'm going to put that as a base file for all of the chats that we're going to do. Right? So now it's there. I'm going to close out. I have that for everything that we're going to do afterwards. If I need to draw from that and do some other things, and I'll show you how in a minute. So I got my instructions. I'm going to add one thing. Put you are an economic developer. I'm just going to give it a persona. You are an economic developer working on developing a CEDS plan for the Dell region. Okay. So we got everything squared away. It knows what we are. Gave it this little personality. We uploaded that big document that the EDA fortuitously gives us all to guide us through writing the process. And then we should be able to get to work now. So remember, I put all of these in. We're just gonna go through a couple of these and kind of see what we can do. So let's just start with the first one, summary background data discovery, identify regional sources and data. Now, I would probably do things more sophisticated than this, but we want to go here, see the tools. We should be there because it's 4.0, which is the base model. It should already be able to search. So now the bad thing is Delville is not a real region. So let's say something I'm familiar with. Most of you know I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, so I've done stuff with South Central Economic Development District a lot when I was with the Fed. So unfortunately, it's not a one-on-one correlation since Delville isn't a real thing, but let's just see. Hey, I need to list reliable sources for regional economic data and summarize key findings for South Central Economic Development District, Nebraska. So for me, I would have probably done some pre-research, on that. I would use, some of the pre-existing documentation that I had. I would have, kind of, pulled into it, maybe use Perplexity, which is another AI search engine, and really started compiling that up versus asking ChatGPT, because it's really not the strongest in terms of searching the internet and parsing data. But we can get it done. I wouldn't have done it. So it kind of gave me some findings and a little bit of summary to at least get me started in that regard. So it says South Central Economic Development's comprehensive economic development strategy. It provides it. Then it gives me a link to the website. Let's see if it's accurate. Sometimes it can be goofy. Ah, there you go. So it popped up their old, strategy from, well, it's still going 21 to 2026. So it's giving me data from that strategy. So let's say I was flipping it over and going into the new one, that may be a good base to start. Then it's showing me the Nebraska Regional Officials Council, Department of Economic Development. This is where I can get it. It's not pulling it over. Some key findings, sectors, strong agricultural, all of those different kind of things. So like for a very entry level, because I asked it to give me sources, not the actual data itself, we could and then it summarized the findings. And so I'm not really sure how deep it could go, but let's see something like what are the counties in SCD? So it pulls the counties, and most data is at the county level. And let's say give me economic data on Adams County, Nebraska. And let's just see what it would do. Now, me personally, because ChatGPT isn't really designed to go that deep into it, I would use it to kind of give me an idea of where I could go for data and some of the data sources. But right now, it's not doing a bad job. It's giving me the GDP for Adams County, household income, employment industry, poverty rate, housing. If I wanted to dig deeper, it has the sources. So Fred, coming from the Fed like me, this is a Fed product, so I'm cool with that. Data USA ain't that bad. So you do have to check your sources, make sure that it's giving you the right numbers. And so you start to see, even with that first, level summary background prompt, we started to be able to get to some of the things that we will want to do. And this would take, for us, even if we only use this as a starting point, I want you to imagine what it would take if we were just hopping in our own. Even if we knew Fred, even if we knew, the census, which this isn't showing, we would still have to do a little bit more legwork to be able to get to some of this information. So now, how does this work in terms of projects? If I hop back to the main, I just click it back over, go back to the region, you'll see that chat there. So that chat stands independently of any other chat that we will want to do. So if I go back into this, right, it's still going to be there and I can keep chatting with it again, even if I did other chats. And that's why what makes projects such a cool deal is because, excuse me, if it ever goes bad. There you go. We'll go that way. So that's what makes projects so cool is it becomes the self-contained, data management chat system where you can interact with it and build things from there. I've really been testing it out while working on trying to finish this last book that I'm writing on ecosystem buildings, and then I'm out of that space. That's my swan song. And figuring out the methodology, and it works pretty good. It's a great editor, great the ability to feed things in. So you see that now. I'm going to go ahead and take this out. No, I'm going to leave it in for a minute because I think it'll be helpful. So let's do this. Let me take this one out because I want us to get into Delville because I do want to leave time for any questions. So I'm going to delete that chat from it. So now it's gone. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention at school about projects in ChatGPT. I can actually, any of these old chats, let's say that I started to do something on AI trends in economic development. I could actually bring that chat into my project, and now it's part of that project. So where did that go? So I'm not sure why it's not doing it now, but usually you can just pull it in there and drag that in there, and then that would be part of it. So you can actually, when you're doing all of those old chats that you were doing, and maybe it was on the same project before, but you had to put them in different chats, you can now pull them over into one project. So now I'm going to add more files to our project files. So I'm going to take my data and I'm going to add all of these data sources into there. So assume that you pulled all of your data, before. Let's just take the data first. I'm going to take the actual data. I'm going to take the cultural insights, the engagement documentation, equity, inclusion, and qualitative insights. And I'm going to leave SWOT out because I want to create that. So it's going to upload all those documents as part of my project now. So now all of that data that you collected and you've been working with stakeholders to pull together, you can use ChatGPT, for example, if you want to structure a well thought out survey. You can use it to structure your user engagement, help you develop meeting schedules, all those cool things. I think they're low hanging fruit things for you to be able to do. And we can show a few examples later if you want. Now I got all my project files. I got my instructions. So let's use that to say, I'm going to go back now to our little database. And let's say we want to write a summary draft of the infrastructure strengths and challenges in the region. I'm just copy and paste that to keep it easy. So draft summary infrastructure strengths and challenges in Dellville. Now for good prompts, let's say consistent with the EDA uploaded documents recommendations. I don't know why it's going back and forth when I do that. So I already got my data now. Now we're kind of going into the content creation side of it. It's thinking through. And then you have summary of infrastructure strengths and challenges in Dellville. It's taking all from our data sources. It's looking at what the EDA said the best, format or the best recommended practices for that. And then it's going to spit it out. So now if I went through all the data beforehand and I'm not just, let's say, just doing this without knowing what data I have, then I probably can look through this and say, yeah, that's pretty consistent with what we have. So we got summary of infrastructure, strengths, challenges, all of that, and it gives us our strengths. Now, again, this is from my mock data sets, and it gives us the challenges, aging infrastructure, equity gaps in connectivity, public transit limitations, things like that. So I have a pretty good, working draft of this particular section, but I don't really like the way that it's formatted. So there's a thing that is called in ChatGPT, it's called Canvas. So this little pencil down here, I'm going to show you why this is just like this stuff is so cool now. I never imagined even when I started they would have it. I'm going to hit edit in Canvas. It takes it from that initial draft of it and it pulls it in exactly what it says, Canvas. Now this is what makes it so cool. I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, it's a good skeleton, but I want it to be better. So let's say something like, I don't like this format. I highlight it and then I can say something like, I don't know why it's not working now. Whenever you get on the tool, it's not working. Anyway, let's see. I'm not sure why it's not working. Well, let's go about it a different way because there's more than one way to do this. So normally you can edit in text now, which you couldn't before. So before, if I was going to rerun this, I would say, I want to rerun this, and then I'll have to rerun my own thing. I wouldn't be able to type into it. Now I can type into it and do all of that stuff now under Canvas. So you can do like real-time editing while it's on there, not just with that, hey, update this, then it gives you a new version. Update this, it gives you a new version. So you got like 100 iterations of the same thing because chat. Now you can actually go in there. And if this really worked the way that it's supposed to, you could go in and actually do editing of each section, but we're going to do this instead. So I'm going to say, please revise this and make it more of a narrative with the headings and subheadings. So now it's going to go back through, it's going to look at this, and it's going to restructure it, into a more narrative framework. And so you can change it according to your stylistic preferences of how you want to write your plan. And heck, let's say that you're in a part of the plan, because I'm not sure where you're at in the development now, where you already started drafting it. You can upload that draft, pull it into Canvas, and have it start going section by section and editing it to change the flow. So here's what happened with my book, right? So, I started working on the book primarily because I had created this big 90 slide PowerPoint presentation I was going to convert into a course on grassroots entrepreneurship ecosystem building. It was sitting on my shelf for 2 years. And I said, let me just turn this into a book. And so I uploaded the chat GPT and then started working on it section by section between that, Claude, and some other things. And started working on it section by section. And I kept expanding. I said, no, I need to talk about this. All the stuff that I talked about for 10, 15 years. And then I got to the final draft and I started reading it and I'm like, no, this isn't a dissertation. The language is too complex. So then, this is where I'm in the process now. I started going backwards, chapter by chapter, changing the language. I said, no, it's too complex. Let's drop the 8th to 10th grade level, each section in ChatGPT, take it in there. It will convert it down to that easier to read level. Then when I read, I'm like, yeah, that's the tone I'm going for. So tone change. So if you're already working on one, you can use this too. So now it kind of gave us a new iteration of it, that same, text. Is it okay? Yeah, I don't really like it. It's more of a narrative. Now it's allowing me to do this. So now let's say I don't really like this entry paragraph. I could say something like, expand on this section and include critical bullets. So now it will work just on this particular section, not the whole thing like we had to do before, which I was trying to show you. I don't know why it didn't work before. And it can kind of come in and create it, and then it will put in the buckets. And this is all drawing on my data. Now, if I want it to be much more strict, and this is something for precision that I want to encourage you to do, always tell it to do not use data sets that are outside of the data that you upload. because sometimes, especially with ChatGPT, it gets a little happy and it'll start using training data and others. So if I put that in the instructions, it would help. Use only the data sets that I upload for this. So now you see it kind of expanded that. So there's different ways now that when it writes a section, if you have good data, that you can use this to kind of craft and become the artist of, the writing versus having to sit and write the whole thing yourself. Because at the end of the day, and I tell people about this all the time, I'm like, if I was taking a test and I used ChatGPT and I was supposed to write it on my own because they were evaluating my writing, that would be cheating. But in my opinion, in things like grant writing and things like plan development, I need to know what is in there. I need to know what I'm trying to communicate. Whether I write it or ChatGPT writes it or whatever is irrelevant because that's not the intent. The intent is to express something that is useful, meaningful, and productive externally. The same way with grants, people should not be penalized because they're not good grant writers. They should only be judged by the ability to execute on whatever project they're writing the grant for. So I do want to clear that up because I know a lot of people feel a certain kind of way about it, but I think we'll be getting past that pretty time soon. So let's hop out of that. So now I'm going to go back to the actual CEDS plan, and you'll see that whole infrastructure summary is now in that chat. And so let's say I wanted to go section by section. I could go through each section, work on each section, and start building out the entire report. And then in that scenario, I'll show you the export function in a second. But then I'm going to rename it because I learned this from my book too. And I would do something like um, intro one. Well, we'll do overview one infrastructure section. So now you know that if you ever want to come back to that and redo it, do some more things with it, maybe you get some more data, you want to bring in the new data into it, you can do that now as part of it. And then I would just go through each piece of that section if I have the data and put it in there. So let's pop up our cheat sheet again. And let's say now we want to do, let's work on a SWOT analysis and let's do some data analysis things. So provide for me some insights from the data on housing. And I don't know if housing is a strength or weakness. I can't remember how I set it up. So our cost to income ratio is 28%, slightly better than the average. Median home price is 250,000, which is lower than the national average. So if you upload all of your data sets, it will draw from that and start giving you it. So let's take from housing and go from the data on housing. What are some good charts and tables we could create for readers? And it'll go through and it'll say, oh, here's some tables you can do. So let's just pick one. Let's do I'll just copy and paste and say, let's do this one. And so it'll go through and it'll start looking at the data sets to kind of do what it's going to do. And it's going through all of those pre-existing data sets that I put into the project, and it's going through and it's reviewing them to come up with it. And then it comes up with, the chart. It's an ugly chart, but I mean, you get the point. You can pop this sucker, open, and kind of look at it at a bigger way. You can export it down into a file just by hitting a little button, and it gives you an output in PNG format that if you wanted to pull it into a presentation, you should. But like Delville National Average, if I wanted to, tell it to manipulate different pieces of the data or whatever, make it more cosmetically pleasing, change the color, I can do all that. So now you have your capacity to evaluate your data sets, convert your data sets into a narrative, convert your data sets into, user-friendly charts that you can use in your sets plan. But that's not really why we came here. So I'm gonna hop out, get rid of that, delete it. Now we want to work on our SWOT. So using, excuse me, using the uploaded data sets and the EDA recommended SWOT, I don't know what it's called, training, well, not training, recommended CEDS planning doc, write a comprehensive, what do we want? SWOT section. Include in there places where a good chart would go. All right, let's see what it comes up with. Now, mind you, sometimes I mess up my typing. If you mess up a word or a letter in it, you don't have to go back and fix it. It's pretty good about understanding what you want. So now it's taking from my data, it's going through and writing that particular section in this particular format. Again, if we wanted to go through, we can change it. We can do all kinds of things with it to make it, consistent with the stylistic style that we will want to do. So again, now I showed you like the core working concepts. If there's any questions, which is hard for me to see because of the deal. Oh yeah, so somebody asked about the cheat sheets. So the cheat sheets, I'm going to send out to you. They're easy, free for you to use. For this training, the data sources I use, I had actually had ChatGPT make up. So I had to make up things in the different areas, demographic data, housing data, etc., so that I could use for training. You normally would pull your own data sets or look at, different tools that could help you do that. It could be GIS. There's a process where you can actually do GIS mapping in ChatGPT. You upload something called a JSON file, and then any addresses that you would have or anything that you want, you could do that, all those different kind of things. For this training, I literally just had to make up the data sets that I knew needed to go into a sets plan. And so it's pulling from all of that fake data for Delville into this. But when you do your data collection, it would be the same. So this is a lot of this is combining both qualitative and quantitative data that you would collect. So in here, so this is some of that quality. And remember, SEDS wants you to talk about how you do employee engagement. So now you see how you can use your data to write the various sections within it. I want to go to just some more basic practical stuff, so stakeholder engagement. I I need to do a town hall for community engagement for my SEDS plan. Based upon what needs to go in the SEDS, give me a draft of a community invite and a list of questions most relevant, right? Because, a lot of us will sit down and think, what questions should I ask? How do I want to structure it? So I get my email draft, it gives me everything, that I want to do. So now I have a draft that I could blast out however I want to blast it out. It gives me questions for the town hall, industry challenges, and it's drawing all of this from the data. It's going back to that EDA document where it talks about things. It's laying them all out to get to a comprehensive one. Now, this is a lot of questions. You're never going to get to them. So I would tell it, no, I need you to pick the best question in each category and pare it down. But now you have your invite, all of that you can do, and you can do it. You can manipulate that or use it for different kind of things. A lot of us, we're not technical researchers. So sometimes if we want, a well-written survey where we avoid some of the pitfalls of leading or other things, we can do that. Now, so I could do something like provide for me a structurally sound 10 question survey based upon best survey practices for the community, right? And so you can do that. It can structure your survey, then you could throw it into your system, whether it's SurveyMonkey or whatever. It breaks it down. It's using, the data that's in the EDAs, what it recommends to kind of structure these kind of deals. Then let's say you get the data back, you can take all of that data, dump it into the system and say, now analyze this for me. Give me analysis of each question, any of the trends you see, any data visualization, all of that. So think about all of the things that you have to do to put a sets plan together, the different components, the different pieces, and think about what this tool can do. And you just learn how to play with it and you do it. And so Patrick asked, how much does this version cost? It only costs $20 a month. And I've never ran up against usage limits of this basic version. And I use it pretty heavily, among other things. And so you got all of these different kind of things that you can do, that are in there. I kind of want to show you, because most of you are doing the data collection, and I'm starting kind of more at the writing phase, assuming that the data was collected. So this is all the fake data that I did. So I'm gonna pull, let's say, mock economic data. So I just had it make, the mock data for me. Let's pull this out. So this is kind of what it's drawing from, and you can have your own sources. You can find things like county business patterns from the census. You can download literally whole Excel files on your counties, stick them all in there. So those of you who use census know how to use it. Let's say it was business, how I would do it. I would literally go to county business patterns. I would download the most recent, comprehensive data set for my counties. I would take, let's say it's 7 counties. I would take all of those. I dump it into one folder. I go to ChatGPT. I upload all of those and say, show me comparisons across county. Show me general trends in general across my entire region. And it would do that. So Matt, I used to do this stuff. I remember when I was working on stuff at the Fed, I would have 5 different spreadsheets open and I'll be doing all the cells and the comparisons and all of these different things, dragging and dropping, all of that. If I would have had this back then, that would save me. I'll put it this way. When I got my PhD, I estimated that if I had access to these tools, it would have probably taken me 50% of the time, half the time, to do the work of my dissertation as it did take before these tools. So it's about working smarter, not harder. So, but I wanted you to kind of show this to say, okay, this is the guts of that I have it make for me. It kind of shows the economic growth industry retail. You're going to be pulling similar things from your data sets. You're going to be pulling, qualitative data for your sets plan, you know, um, then I'm going to show you one more thing and then I'll open it up for questions. So this is an example of qualitative data here. So equity and inclusion insights from it. 65% respond to underserved communities feel unrepresented, all of those different kind of things. It can take this from your themes and aggregate them and analyze them. So in 2 minutes now, I want to do one more thing and then give you 5 minutes if there's any additional questions you have. So now we got our sections for the sets plan. So the summary background, we'll start there. So this is what I want to do because this is the tail end of it. So write me a poor version of the summary background for Belleville. Make it really crappy. All right. So here's our crappy SEDS plan, right? Our crappy introduction to the SEDS plan. This is what it came up with. Delville is a place where people live and work and do things. It has stuff like roads, schools, and businesses, and sometimes people meet to talk about and improve things. The area is okay, but it can probably do better. There are problems, but also opportunities, and it's important to make a plan. The end. I got my wish as a crappy sets plan. Now, you're going to write your stuff. This is what I strongly advise you to do. Review my summary background and identify areas for improvement based upon EDA's document, guidance document. So it's going to take, what I put in there, or if I had it uploaded, however I want to get it in there, and then it's going to take what the EDA said we should be doing, and it's going to tell me this is how it doesn't line up, right? So now I'm in editorial mode. If I want a good sets plan that fits the EDA criteria, and so look at everything that I pointed out: lack of context, no vision or goals, absence of data, weak tone and professionalism, all of those different kind of things. Now, based upon those findings, correct, write a better version of that section. So let's say you already started down the road of writing your sets plan, and you're like, I don't really know if this is good or not. I've been reading this. I've been reading it, but I think my plan is okay. Let me double check. Stick that EDA document in there, stick your document in there and say, hey, tell me where I'm good, tell me where I'm bad. Then it gives you an opportunity to correct it. So I told it to improve it. And then of course it expanded, it was more specific, etc. All of those different kind of things. So I hope that, kind of helps you understand some of the things that this tool can do for you. And this is just scratching the table. Like if I was going to actually make this a training class at IEDC, I would break it down into so many more different components to help walk you through it. But this is my feeling. Like we don't have a lot of time. Economic developers are always strapped for time. We're always looking for tools that can create a